I used to believe that growing old meant growing softer, that the world would handle me gently, the way I had once handled my children and grandchildren. My home, with its soft cushions, fading curtains, and the lingering scent of cinnamon and rosewater, had always been a sanctuary. After my husband passed away, it became even more precious to me. I filled it with memories, framed photos on the walls, embroidered cushions I stitched with my own hands, and shelves lined with toys my grandchildren once played with. When they visited, they brought noise, beautiful, chaotic noise. Their laughter echoed through the living room like music. For years, I lived on that music. But one day the tune changed. It started small. A comment. A little tease. My eldest grandson, Ryan, was the first to cross the line, though he didn't realize it then. I had just poured myself a cup of tea, placed it on the table, and walked to the kitchen to fetch sugar. When I returned, Ryan smirked. "Grandma, you already drank that one. You forgot, didn't you?" His friends giggled. My own grandchildren laughed. I felt my cheeks warm with embarrassment, but I forced a smile. "My memory isn't what it used to be," I joked lightly. I tried to laugh with them, tried to show that I didn't mind. But something inside me tightened, a string pulled too harshly. The next weekend they hid my slippers. I spent 10 minutes searching, limping slightly because the tile floors were cold on my bare feet. When I finally found the slippers tucked under the sofa, they burst into laughter. "Oh, come on, Grandma, it's just a joke. Lighten up, Grandma." Again I laughed. But my smile felt like paper, thin, fragile, fake. Little by little, their jokes grew bolder, crueler. One afternoon, when I stepped out to water my plants, they locked the back door. I knocked gently, thinking perhaps it jammed. When they opened it, they held their phones up, recording. "Grandma's confused again." They posted the video online. A fact I discovered only weeks later when a neighbor mentioned seeing me on one of those apps the young people use. The humiliation washed over me like cold water. Still, I told myself they didn't mean harm. Still, I forgave. But the day that changed everything came unexpectedly, during what was supposed to be an ordinary visit. Ryan brought 2 friends with him. They were wandering around the house, touching things, whispering, snickering. I made tea, hoping to bring warmth into the room. Then, suddenly, a loud thud. I turned around to see Ryan sprawled dramatically on the staircase. He clutched his leg, groaning theatrically. "She pushed me," he shouted, pointing at me. His friends erupted into laughter, recording my stunned expression. "It's just a joke, Grandma." A joke. My heart lurched painfully. My hands shook. For a moment, everything inside me went silent, numb. That night, after they left, I sat alone in the dim lamplight. The walls that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed to echo with their laughter, mocking, sharp, unforgiving. And as I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders, one truth settled into my bones. They weren't laughing with me anymore. They were laughing at me. And that kind of laughter leaves bruises no one sees. If Chapter 1 was the beginning of the cracks, Chapter 2 was when the whole foundation of my trust began to crumble. I had always believed my grandchildren carried pieces of my heart inside them. Pieces made of tenderness, patience, and love. I raised their fathers with those same values. I fed them, clothed them, soothed their tears, whispered prayers over their cradles. I thought that love passed down through generations became stronger, never weaker. But I discovered that even the strongest roots can rot. It started with my wedding ring, my most cherished possession, the last gift my husband gave me before he passed. A simple gold band, worn smooth with time and love. I kept it on my bedside table where sunlight caught it every morning. One afternoon I noticed it missing. At first I doubted myself. Maybe I had moved it. Maybe I misplaced it. My mind, after all, was not as sharp as it used to be. That's what everyone kept telling me. But deep down I knew. I felt an ache in my chest that wasn't confusion. It was knowing. I asked my granddaughter Lena. She shrugged, not even looking up from her phone. "You probably lost it somewhere, Grandma. Don't stress. You forget things." Forget things. That phrase had become a shield they used to deflect responsibility, and a knife they used to cut my confidence. Days later, a neighbor's daughter showed me a video on her phone, some trendy social media clip my granddaughter had posted. There was Lena, smiling brightly wearing my ring. Caption: found this vintage ring in a thrift store. Cute, right? Vintage. Thrift store. My hands trembled as I watched the loop repeat. I didn't confront her. I didn't have the strength yet. But a seed of betrayal was planted. The world around me began to change. Neighbors I had known for years started speaking slower, softer, as if I were a fragile glass teacup. One even offered to write down a phone number so you don't forget. Confusion pricked me until I overheard my grandchildren whispering to a neighbor. Oh, Grandma gets confused these days. She forgets everything. Her memory's not reliable. Reliable. It was strange how the people I trusted most could make me doubt myself so deeply. Then came the incident at the bank. A call from an officer asking, "Mrs. Amara, are you sure you wanted to transfer money to your grandson?" Transfer? Money? I felt the blood drain from my face. Of course not, I said firmly. That's when they told me a document with my signature had been submitted. My signature. The one I had lovingly written on hundreds of birthday cards, recipe instructions, and school permission slips. A signature my family recognized as well as their own names. A signature they had copied. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the empty space where my ring once sat. My heart felt heavier than ever before. I had always believed betrayal came from strangers, never from your own blood. But betrayal from family carries a unique pain, slow, quiet, like a needle stitching wounds you cannot show. I felt myself shrinking inside the home I once ruled with love. But in that shrinking, something else was forming. Something sharper, something stronger. A resolve beginning to awaken. The night after the forged bank document incident, I sat in my living room with only one lamp lit. The shadows stretched across the floor like long fingers, reaching toward me. My hands rested on my lap, steady but cold. I had cried enough. I had begged enough, quietly in my heart, never out loud. This time I did not cry. This time, I opened the drawer beside me and pulled out a small, unused notebook. Its pages were crisp, untouched. A blank slate, waiting to be written on. I held a pen above the first page and wrote slowly, clearly. Day 1. Ryan attempted unauthorized bank transfer using forged signature. Something shifted inside me the moment the ink dried. It was as if writing the truth reclaimed a little piece of my voice. The next day. Day 2. Lena stole wedding ring. Evidence, video. The notebook filled quickly. Not because the incidents were new, but because I finally acknowledged them. Every word I wrote became a small stone in the fortress I was beginning to build. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show anger. That was their expectation. To see me frantic, confused, or disoriented, so they could dismiss me. Instead, I became quieter, observant, unpredictably still, and quietly powerful. I went to the electronics store and purchased small, inexpensive security cameras. Ones that blended easily with the plants on my shelves or the books I lined neatly on the dresser. My home became my witness. Every prank, every theft, every sneer was now captured with perfect clarity. They didn't know. They laughed louder than ever, believing I remained blind. Once, when they unplugged my microwave as a joke, claiming I must have done it myself, I simply nodded and pretended to struggle turning it back on. Meanwhile, the camera recorded every second. That same evening, I visited a lawyer. No one in my family knew this lawyer. I chose him intentionally. I sat across from him, my shawl wrapped tightly around me, and placed my notebook and a USB drive on his desk. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he said words that felt like a warm blanket. "Mrs. Amara, you are not powerless. You are not alone." For months, I had felt like a solitary island sinking into an ocean of disrespect. Hearing those words steadied me again. He advised me to continue gathering evidence. He guided me to file quiet, official complaints with Elder Protection Services. Complaints that would sit waiting like seeds ready to bloom when the time was right. I consulted a social worker who inspected my home. She spoke to me gently, not with pity, but with respect. She showed me resources, numbers to call, people trained to stand beside someone like me. I protected myself silently, like closing doors one by one before a storm. I rewrote my will, removing every name that had betrayed me, I added charities, a distant cousin who once took care of me after surgery, and a women's shelter I had donated to in the past. Then I wrote letters, each addressed to the police, my lawyer, and even my grandchildren. Letters that would only be opened if anything happened to me. I placed them carefully in a folder labeled, "In case of emergency, please read." With every step I took, I felt pieces of my strength returning. Pieces I had given away freely, believing kindness was enough. I realized something profound. I did not need to raise my voice to be heard. I did not need to fight loudly to win. I simply needed truth, patience, and silence. Because silence, when used wisely, is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Justice doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it comes in soft footsteps, firm voices, and a quiet knock on the door. That Friday afternoon began like any other. The sunlight filtered in through my lace curtains, leaving delicate patterns across the floor. I was sitting at the kitchen table, peeling apples for a pie. The same pie my grandchildren used to love when they were younger, when laughter in this house was warm, not cold. I heard a car stop outside. Then muffled voices. Then the unmistakable, authoritative knock. 3 loud, steady raps. Not the playful, careless knocking of teenagers. Not the familiar tap-tap of my neighbor. I opened the door slowly. Standing before me were 3 uniformed officers, their expressions serious but gentle. Behind them, clustered on the sidewalk like frightened children, were Ryan, Lena, and my other grandson. Their faces were pale, stripped of arrogance. No phones recording. No lefted. "Mrs. Amara," the lead officer said, showing his badge. "We're here regarding complaints of elder coercion, financial manipulation, and theft." My hands trembled, not from fear, but from release. From the weight of months finally unburdening. "Please come in," I said softly. They stepped inside, and the air itself seemed to change. My grandchildren attempted to follow, but the officer blocked them. "Not yet." The 3 of them stood outside, sweating in the sun, finally silent. Inside, I opened the drawer where I had kept everything carefully tucked away. My notebook, the USB drives, copies of documents, dates, times, details. All my silent suffering, documented with precision. I placed them on the table one by one. The officers examined the footage, the videos of the hidden camera recordings, the pranks, the manipulation, the mocking, the forging attempt. The youngest officer's jaw tightened. "This is clear evidence," he said quietly. Outside, I could hear my grandchildren shifting nervously, whispering, in panic, not amusement this time. The officers invited them inside. They entered reluctantly, moving as though the floor itself would accuse them. "Grandma, we didn't mean. It was just. Come on, it was a joke." "A joke doesn't require a forged signature," the officer cut in sharply. "A joke doesn't involve stealing valuables. A joke doesn't involve isolating and gaslighting an elderly woman." Their eyes darted to me, wide with fear. For the first time in a long time, they looked at me, not at a joke, not at a fragile old woman they could manipulate. They looked at someone they had underestimated. When we reached the police station, I gave my statement calmly. No shaking voice. No tears. I had already cried enough in the darkness of my room. This was the daylight. My truth. In court, I sat in the front row while the judge examined the evidence. The recordings played on a large screen. Their laughter echoed through the room. Sharp, cruel, inescapable. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Amara, you demonstrated remarkable clarity and courage. Your documentation is exceptionally thorough." I felt warmth spread through my chest. Validation. Acknowledgement. Strength returning to old bones. My grandchildren stood with bowed heads. Their lawyer whispered to them, but they barely moved. Their laughter was gone, lost forever in their own echoes. The ruling included mandatory corrective programs, restitution, and legal consequences fitting their actions. Not extreme. Not cruel. Just fair. Justice. After the hearing, I walked outside alone. The air was crisp, the sun soft against my face. I held my shawl tightly around my shoulders, not for warmth, but for comfort. As I reached my house, the silence inside felt different, not empty but peaceful. I placed the evidence folder in a storage box, closed the lid gently, and whispered to myself, I am not weak. I was never weak. That night I baked another apple pie, this time for myself. And with every bite, I tasted something sweeter than any dessert. The quiet triumph of a grandmother who refused to break.